Welcome to Better Odds Sports Betting. Here's our hosts, Kiev O'Neill and Kyle Hunter.
Welcome back. What is happening, college basketball fans? Kyle in the flesh, ready to talk some huge games for this weekend. Kyle, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Next time we talk, it's going to be March. That's always nice. We love March Madness. Conference tournaments start next week. It's about to get real here, Kiev.
It's about to get real. It sure is. I can't believe conference tournaments are here with the Super Bowl in the middle. Like we've said even last year, it just kind of pushes things back. Not a big fan of it, but you know what? I have a great time with college basketball during the playoffs anyway. So more importantly, there is a massive slate this weekend. This is probably like the last big slate of like conference, everything, every game. You know, it's like there's a lot of teams playing this Saturday. So Kyle's going to be massively busy tonight. I can tell you that. I'm going to be busy tonight. It's probably going to be a late night, an early morning too. I have my alarm nice and early. It's the peaceful time when my kids aren't around. So I'll be capping pretty hard. And I already started, my friend, because we have some pretty big games to go over for the weekend. So might as well just get right into it. You know, the more we can talk about these games, the more value we can bring from this show. So Friday, Kyle, I mean, not a huge slate as normal, but there's one big game, and that is Seton Hall versus Xavier. So everything else, a little bit more of a, mid-major type game, some pretty small conferences, and you obviously have the Metro Atlantic there where Kyle mentioned that the away teams do well, and they actually did very well that Friday night last week. So nice work on that, Kyle.
Yeah, those teams have done really well on the road. I haven't found any road teams I love in the MAAC this week. Canisius was a nice one last weekend. Fairfield Niagara, kind of an interesting game here for this week. Iona, a smaller favorite than they were at the Open. Like you said, Xavier Seton Hall is the big game here tonight. And as far as that game, Kiev, I'd want to take Seton Hall, but 1.5 points now, the spread. I mean, you're not getting any great price, certainly, taking the Seton Hall Pirates at this point. So I see 87% of the money is on Seton Hall in this game. Xavier's not played nearly as well of late as they did early in the season. I feel like they've been they peaked at the wrong time so far this year, but they've been a bit banged up as well. Seton Hall needs this win badly as far as their chances to get in the NCAA tournament. I don't know. Do you have any strong opinion on that game?
So when I had my show earlier this week, I actually leaned Xavier, and I was considering making a play on them, but I talked myself out of it. You can definitely tell the sharper, or at least the larger money is on Seton Hall. Now, these are like home teams. Home teams have been great in some situations here, and obviously you have two things going for you with Seton Hall. You have motivation because they actually kind of think they can get in the tournament. They have that big UConn win, so maybe that goes some ways. The Rutgers win is aging poorly, unfortunately, and I'm not sure what they're going to look at the Memphis win. I mean, you're 16-12. They win out. They're on the bubble for sure. The Providence might even do it if if a couple other teams falter, because you have a lot of Big Ten teams on the bubble here with the Wisconsins and the Michigans and things like that. So it's going to be a very interesting finish here. So yeah, the pure desperation, home team. And I do like Shaheen Holloway. I think he is a good coach. I thought that when he did that at St. Peter's, it wasn't just like, okay, a one and done like we saw with Oregon State, right? Oregon State makes that massive push and the coach stinks the next couple of years. So it was Shaheen Holloway. I truly believe he is a good coach. Xavier is in a pretty desperate spot in a way themselves. They lost 3 of their last 4. Now, it's not like desperate because they're in the tournament, but, they do have Fremantle hurt, and he's supposed to be coming back in the early March. I feel like just losing 3 out of the 4 should give them some away motivation. They played away Marquette very well away, but, as a favorite away, like against Butler, That did not work out too well for them. They lost to Butler, and I don't care if it was by 2 points. So I'm kind of flip-flopping in my head. I'm not playing the game. I'm going from leaning Xavier to not playing the game, Kyle. So that's kind of my thought on that one. Moving on, I will give you a play that I did make, and the line moved in my direction, but I wouldn't take it now at the -3.5. It's Nevada. Nevada's at Fresno State, and I did try to fade Fresno against Air Force, and I lost that earlier this week. It was either earlier this week or Saturday. I can't remember when they played. It was pretty recent. But here's the thing with Fresno. They have a pretty big injury themselves. And so if I pull out just kind of the general injury board that I sometimes look at covers here, and I'll share my screen, it's Moore. Isaiah Moore is out, and he was a pretty big player for this team. As you can see, if you look at some of his stats here at covers, 19 points here, 19 points here, 14 points, 13, 31, 24. He was the best scorer on the team on Fresno. Now they kind of got by without him when they just played he's stopped playing at San Jose State when he just played Air Force, like I just mentioned. But I think this injury is going to take a much bigger hit, and you have a Nevada team that is poised to, make a run at winning this conference. I mean, they only have 4 losses here. I know San Diego State's the leader here with only 2 losses, but they're not out of it here, and they do have an opportunity for a better seed. And they have opportunity for a big win. So Ken Pom has this at 67-61, and that factors in a lot of the play of Moore, who's played most of the year. So if Ken Pom's going to have that big of a stretch here, why is the spread only 2.5 or 3 points in the first place? My number's 5 because it's still an away game, hard to trust, but I did take it at 2.5. If you can find a 3, I lean Nevada, Kyle.
There are still some 3s out there. And at that price, I do think Nevada is probably a pretty good play here. Fresno State's been inconsistent. They don't have a great home court advantage. Nevada, this is one of those games they really can't afford to lose. This hurts their resume if they lose. It doesn't really help that much if they win. The Mountain West has a bunch of bubble teams here at this point. I think Nevada is the better team. I think that they're playing pretty well here at the end of the season. Nevada also the team that can score a lot more. Fresno State offensively, pretty big struggle for them. So I think truthfully, this is probably a pretty good play on Nevada. Kind of lean the over as well. I have to say though, overs with Fresno State, not fun to take at all. So my favorite bet here would be Nevada. And if you do shop around, there are some 3s still available.
Yeah, Nevada's just not, they're a mid-range shooting team. I'm not a big fan of mid-range shooting teams. Kyle isn't either, from the many times we've discussed it. And, their 3-point percentage adjusted is 343rd in the league. So, Nevada pulls away. Fresno's going to have a tough time making a comeback here. So that's the other game that I keyed in on. I did look at the Metro Atlantic, and I don't like the away teams tonight either. I think it's a little bit of a tough draw for some of those situations. So let's move on to Saturday, Kyle. We have a massive slate, as I said before. I always like to pull up Haslametrics as they, always have every single game kind of handicapped from the efficiency aspect of it, which is nice. So you compare it to the spread. But in my opinion, I love this slate of games. There's just so much opportunity. We picked some good ones for you. Kyle, why don't you go first?
So let's talk about a big one in St. Mary's and Gonzaga. A lot of times I talk about these under the radar games. There's nothing really under the radar about Gonzaga anymore, that's for sure. St. Mary's beat Gonzaga the first time. Gonzaga should have won that game. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people watched that game. Gonzaga controlled throughout. St. Mary's came back, won in overtime. And this is a game where I've kind of had this circled that I would want to bet Gonzaga here if we can get a good number. I think Gonzaga is the right side in this game. The tiebreaker for the conference is the better net. I haven't looked at the net as far as how far Gonzaga is behind St. Mary's at this point, but I know that factors in margin of victory. Gonzaga has been running up the score on purpose here of late because they kind of need to, because that's the tiebreaker if these two finish tied in the conference. Now, can they run up the score on St. Mary's? I'm not suggesting they're going to crush St. Mary's, but KenPom has 2. Gonzaga favored by 2. I don't think it'll be that small. I think it's more likely to be something like 3 or 3.5. If this is 3, I like Gonzaga. If it gets more than 3, it's getting a little bit pricey. But I really think this Gonzaga offense has turned a corner big time here in the last few games. Julian Strother has been tremendous. Obviously, Drew Timme is very good. But it's the guards have been so good for Gonzaga that Timme has kind of become an afterthought in some of these games. And I think that's kind of a maturation process for this Gonzaga offense, is that they don't have to go to Drew Timme all the time to be successful on offense. I don't think St. Mary's, as good as their defense is, I don't think they can shut down the Gonzaga offense. I think this is a good spot here for the Zags.
I agree. I talked about this game earlier this week. According to Haslametrics, it's more of like a 3.2 point favorite here for Gonzaga. I think it's going to be 3.5, and that's what I wrote down. But I would bet it at 3.5. I would take this easily up to 5. Yeah, KenPom has it at 2. It's such an interesting game because it's the big contrast of speed and offensive efficiency versus defense and slow pace, right? So, St. Mary's 358th in pace, no hit in there. And that's what they do. They try to drain you and tire you out. Well, Gonzaga is a great team when it comes to win because they're constantly running. And by now, they're in really good shape. I was on Gonzaga, unfortunately, Saturday, February 4th, where they went to overtime. I had the 3.5, and I was disappointed when it went to overtime because I knew exactly what could happen in overtime, and that's called the bad overtime beat when you're on the dog. Whenever you're on a dog that goes to overtime, it's a bad overtime beat. It's just the way it is, unless you somehow lucked up into that tie. So, in this situation, there's a couple things that really stick out to me, Kyle. St. Mary's, whenever they stepped up in competition, minus San Diego State, which I think is a little overrated, they lost. They lost to Washington in overtime. They lost to New Mexico. They lost to Houston, which I'm not super high on Houston. And then, they did beat Gonzaga, and I do give them credit for the, getting to overtime. There's a couple calls that they got some nice home court advantage, in my opinion. But, Gonzaga, at least, even though they have the losses against Purdue, the loss against Baylor by 1 point, and the Texas loss, they at least scheduled a lot better. They beat Kentucky. They beat Michigan State on that neutral boat, let's call it, aircraft carrier. And they beat Alabama. And Alabama, as you can see, number 3 in efficiency on KenPom. They beat them by 10 points. So Gonzaga, I think this is all Gonzaga. There's a revenge spot. Now, Kyle, I love how you mentioned the net because that's how it goes. Where can I find out who's leading in net margin?
I'm not really sure. It's the net rankings. So that system, I'm not exactly sure where they're at on this. While we're talking, I'm going to see if I can look this up and find the information. But it's not really something I usually factor into my handicapping too much. But I knew that it factored into this one because it's the tiebreaker. But the net, where the college basketball committee is using that for the quad 1, quad 2, quad 4, it looks like, okay, so Kiev, St. Mary's is 7th in the net rankings, and Gonzaga is 10th. So Gonzaga might have to win by a decent amount here. So that's also something to consider if you're watching this live and Gonzaga gets a decent lead. I would think they'll try to do their best to keep the pedal to the metal here in a game like this because they need to. They want to win that regular season crown. Obviously, they can still play the conference tournament, but the net rankings, 7th for St. Mary's and 10th for Gonzaga. Kiev, the only thing you said there that I disagree with is Houston. I do like Houston. I think they're a good team. I have Houston to reach the Final Four, so hopefully they at least get to the Final Four. That was a pretty nice price before the season, like plus 350 or something like that. So hopefully Houston gets to the Final Four. It sounds like Kiev thinks they might get knocked off, though.
Yeah, I think Houston benefits from their schedule. They can play great basketball. I mean, their coach is a phenomenal coach, but he seems to kind of falter when it comes to the NCAA tournament and some big games. Um, I think they got to the Elite Eight like 2 years ago or 1 year ago or something like that. They also have had the injury bug a couple times. They're beating a lot of teams by margin, but I also think that the American Athletic Conference is a little bit overrated. I don't think Cincinnati is the 67th best game. I don't think Memphis is 38th personally. I know they have some very good positions there, very good athletes there, but yeah, I'm just not high on. I'm not as high in Houston as number one. Let's say, okay, I put him in the top 10, Kyle. I put him in the top 10, but I'm not going to put him as number one. Let's just make that clear. Yeah, the net rankings. I thought that the way the NCAA doing it is they try to do somewhat like efficiency. You're beating teams by margin over your expectation. That's how they rank them. I don't know completely how the net ranking works, Kyle. I just know that it is important now. You did see St. Mary's win by 30 some points last night. They kept pouring it on because that's what they cared about too. They wanted to be higher. Yeah, will this flip it if Gonzaga gets some margin? Maybe so. This is a nice revenge spot for Gonzaga. This is their rival. This is the way that they can say that they're still the team in the West Coast Conference. I hope this spreads it too. I really do. I really hope it is. I don't think it's going to be that nice to us, but I will take this all the way up to 4.5, in my opinion. It's just the stars will be a little bit bigger on my bet size if it's that low. Let's go to a game that I'm choosing, and that is a team that I bet on and lost just recently. Talk about all my losses lately. Vanderbilt versus Florida. Now, I think the odds makers in the market are going to know that Florida is somewhat in disarray, and they lost their best player on the floor in Castleton. And he's not just their best player. I mean, he's like the whole team, really. And since they lost Castleton, they lost to Arkansas. They got beat by like 21 points, 19 or 20 points, actually. Then they just lost by 8 to Kentucky at home. Castleton was just such a big guy for rebounds and everything else in this game. But I hate to say it, Florida, they're busted now. They're not going to gain anything by going on the road and beating a number 88 on Ken Pom Vanderbilt. They are not going to gain anything by beating Georgia, which they're probably not going to beat anyway, and certainly not going to gain anything by beating LSU. Now, I did bet Vandy versus LSU just because it's like LSU. What I've been fading them for weeks. Why stop now? Well, LSU finally won. I watched that game. LSU couldn't miss. Everything they were throwing up was going in. It was LSU played the ball that I thought they would play when they were 13-1 or something earlier in the season, and then they lose like 13 in a row or something like that. Well, they're 13-15 now, and I just know that this is a massive spot for Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt, in their minds, that they could make the tournament. They're 15-13. They have a win against number 6 Tennessee. They have a win against number 22 Auburn. They have a win against number 15 Arkansas. Pittsburgh. They have a pretty good resume when it comes down to it. This could be like the lowest Ken Pom at-large team to make it if in the top Power 5 conferences, Kyle. So I think that this is a massive spot for Vanderbilt. I expect them to just pour it on Florida. Now, Ken Pom's got this as a loss by 1 point. I think it's going to be 3. I think that they're going to favor 3 points for the Castleton injury, and I don't even think that's nearly high enough. I'm taking Vanderbilt, which is going to control the boards. And I love Liam Robbins, man. That player, when he was in the Big Ten on Minnesota, I was like, that guy's got something going on. Well, he transferred, obviously, to Vanderbilt with the coach leaving in Pitino. I love Vanderbilt in this spot.
Yeah, I can't disagree as far as liking Vanderbilt in this spot. I don't think Vanderbilt will end up getting to the tournament, but I think that Vanderbilt is good enough at home. Pretty good home court advantage. Look at what Vanderbilt's done at home so far this year. They beat Pitt at home. Pitt's been a pretty good team. They beat Tennessee, obviously a really big win. They beat Arkansas at home. They beat Auburn at home. I think this is more, for me, a fade of Florida than it is me liking Vanderbilt. I assume the same for you. this Florida team really has nothing going for it at this point. They've lost 5 of their last 6. They lost by far their best player. He's really their best player on both ends of the court. So, it hurts their defense quite a bit not to have that shot blocker. And offensively, he's taken 26% of their shots. So I think Vanderbilt's a good play here. I like the way you're thinking, Kiev. I think maybe Vanderbilt will be favored by like 2.5 points would be my guess. So I think it's right in that range where Vanderbilt could be a good play in this one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I hope so, man. This one, if it's anything short of 3, this spread is completely off, in my opinion. But there are some massive games this weekend, man. There's Baylor versus Texas. Whew. I mean, Ken Palm's got Baylor by about 1.8 points on this. Or sorry, Haslametrics has Baylor 1.8. Baylor lost those 2 games on the road, but the Big 12 has kind of become like the Big 10. Baylor does not perform well on the road. They used to be a great road team. They're very inconsistent, but so is Texas. They're a little bit inconsistent, and Texas is a bad road team. I'm going to probably be looking to back Baylor. If you look, the Texas ranks 296 in away home court discrepancy. Baylor number 9. I feel like when Texas plays a team that speeds it up, Kyle, they tend to falter. When they play some slower teams, they seem to do better, and they've got some pretty good road wins because of it. But you see Texas, they have that loss against Kansas when they went away by 8 points. Now that's acceptable, but they have that nasty loss to Texas Tech when they went away too. So Texas Tech has slightly speeded up without Bacho being in, and it's really been working out for them as well. So this is going to be a spot where I'm probably going to have to back Baylor. Baylor coming off those nasty 2 losses here to Kansas when they were leading by multiple points at half. They got outscored like 60-30. So something ridiculous in the second half that game. I was like at the grocery store looking at it. I was like, I thought this game was over. No, it wasn't even close to over. Kansas at the Fog was amazing. Then they're keeping up with Kansas State mostly, but I mean, it was just such a bad spot after that Kansas loss. I love Baylor in this spot, or at least I like them. Yeah, I'm guessing it's got to be under 3 because, after what you've seen. So I'll be looking to possibly back Baylor here if the price is right.
Yeah, I would back Baylor if I was backing a side. I still think Baylor is a good futures play. They haven't played well the last couple games. I think Baylor's a good team. The Big 12 is so good. Big 12 teams I'm high on going into the tournament because they're so battle tested. The worst team in the Big 12, think about where they'd be in another power conference. That'd be like a middle team, one of the teams that you would consider a pretty tough team to beat. And that's at the bottom of the Big 12. They're fantastic this year. I think the total here is kind of interesting too. Ken Palm has 154. Bart Torvik has 156. Maybe you can see what Haslametrics has on that one too. But I think 154 or 156 is too high. The way that these 2 teams have been playing of late, I think that you can't set a total in the mid 150s for this big of a game. So if it is set that high, I would bet the under. My guess is it'll come in lower than that. But I like Baylor too. I think Baylor -2 is probably a pretty good guess as to what this will be. Texas has played very well. Can't say anything negative about them, but on the road, they've not been fantastic. They lost at Iowa State. They lost at Tennessee by 11, lost to Kansas by 8. Not a bad loss, but they also lost to Texas Tech on the road. They've played great at home. They have the one good road win against Kansas State. I think this is a good bounce back spot, though, for a Baylor team that is better than they've shown here in the last couple of games.
Yeah, Texas doesn't defend the 3 well on the road either, and that's where Baylor, they rank 8th in adjusted 3-point percentage on Haslametrics. If you look at the home road discrepancy here, like I said, Texas 296, Baylor number 9th at home. So shows you that they've been really stepping it up at home here and more or less faltering on the road. Would you like to pick one for Saturday, Kyle?
Sure, yeah, and guys, I see OG put something in there, and we'll cover one of these games or both of these games here in a minute. So, but feel free to request any games. We can definitely try to hit on some of these quickly. Let's talk about. Well, should we talk about another big game, Kiev, or should we go under the radar?
Kyle, let's go under the radar, my man.
All right, so let's talk about a game that's a bit under the radar. There's quite a few good games tomorrow in general. One thing to keep in mind, and I'll just say just as kind of a general thought, I think I might have said this last week, Kiev, but it bears repeating. If you're betting a game between two teams that probably don't care at all, you would look toward an over. In general, if you're betting a game that's very important at the end of the season, it certainly helps the under. The trends have played out that way in the past week here, and I think that will probably continue. Let's talk about Furman and Samford, Kiev. Way under the radar, but a really good game. SoCon, we've talked about the SoCon before. SoCon's a good basketball conference compared to what people think. Samford's 15-2, Furman is 14-3. This is the final game of the season. So it all comes down to this game. Samford leading the conference. Their star, Kez Glover, missed a good amount of the season, but he's back healthy, playing well here of late. Furman, a well-coached team with Bob Ritchie, team that, if you remember, they came up just short last year of reaching the NCAA tournament. I believe it was Chattanooga beat them with like a buzzer beater right at the end of the game. Tough way to lose. I think both of these teams are very good teams. I think the thing that's interesting here is the total. Ken Palm has 155. This is a big game. It's a really big game for both teams. I think 155 might be too high. That's me saying the under in a key game where it means everything to the teams. I think the under might be the right way to go. I'm not sure exactly where this total will come out. If it comes out lower than that, I probably won't bet the under. But I think this is a fantastic game because I think either of these teams is capable of winning a game in the NCAA tournament if they get to the NCAA tournament and have the right matchup, obviously. You know how much that line that they get put on in the bracket matters. We're always talking about, man, they hose this mid-major team. I think these teams do have a shot. Both of these teams like to run. Both of these teams are pretty good when it comes to getting to the line. Furman doesn't foul very much, so it'll be interesting to see if Samford can continue getting to the line. I think Samford at home here has a good shot. Bucky McMillan was a really good, I think, Division II or Division III coach, and now he's come in and done a really good job here in his first couple of years at Samford. They've won 7 games in a row. This is a massive game. I like Samford here to win the game outright. -1 is what KP has. I think that's probably about right. But you have any thought on this game, Kiev?
I see a lot of offense in this game now. I mean, when the game's this important, you first inclination is the under sometimes, but and I just don't see how this is necessarily going to go under. I know that they at least don't turn over the ball a ton, but I did look on Haslametrics here, and these teams are pretty good, in fast break points, especially Samford here. I mean, not terrible at it. If you look, all the green is on both sides of the offense. Your field goal percentage, your 3-point percentage. The defense doesn't really show here. I mean, you're going to have a pretty high total. I don't think I would bet the under here. I think this could get really chippy and really back and forth, possibly foul city at the end because of the importance here. I don't have a side in it, though. I think it's just a great game. I always, I guess, default lean to the home team, but Samford's busted a couple of my bets in the past, so I'm scared to fade them in the first place. Furman always been a powerful team in the Southern Conference. They've really been the cream of the crop over the past few years. I love the fact that they shoot 55.5 effective field goal. That is just phenomenal. If they can do that on the road, that's going to be a very big thing. Haslametrics on the road has them pretty good road team, 80th really. So it says that they do hit shots on the road. I lean to the over, Kyle.
I can't take the over in this kind of game just because it means so much to both teams. We'll see what the total comes out at, but more than anything, I thought that was an interesting game to cover based on how good those two teams are. And I don't think we've covered those teams, so that's a fun one to hit on. Let's talk about Kentucky, Auburn, or USC, Utah here for OG. Kiev, which one do you want to start off here? Which one do you want to
start? Auburn.
Let's do it. Kentucky, Auburn. I can start here. This is a Kentucky team that's played better here of late. Kentucky's upside is very high. What is Auburn? I mean, I think they're 28 games into the season, but I don't know if I know what Auburn is. I don't think they're that good of a team. I think the SEC is relatively weak as a conference, especially when we've been talking about the Big 12. It's hard to talk about the Big 12 and then go to the SEC. This is not college football. We're talking college basketball. So I think in this one, Auburn is a team that has not shown me enough on the road. Their road wins are Washington in the Pac-12. They beat Washington. They beat LSU. Everybody's been beating LSU. They beat South Carolina on the road. Then they lose 46-43 against Tennessee. What an ugly game. And then 83-78 at Texas A&M. Then they lose to Vanderbilt. I think Kentucky would be the side I'd have to bet in this game. I think Kentucky's upside is a lot higher than Auburn's upside. The question is, what price do you have to pay here to bet Kentucky? Because Ken Palm has two. What does Haslametrics have this one at, Kiev?
I'll pull it up here right now. And I believe Hasla has it around just actually 1.4, 1.7. So I'll share my screen. Hasla's got a pretty close game. They have it 71.03 to 69.96.
Yeah, and Bart Torvik has 1.3 for Kentucky. So maybe we do get a pretty good price on Kentucky. I would lean Kentucky. You give me 2 points or fewer on Kentucky. I think that's probably the right side. I don't know what to do with the total. Kentucky's defense has kind of disappointed me. In the conference are giving up 1.076 points per possession. Not good in a conference that's not exactly filled with great offensive teams. Auburn, a bad offensive team, or at least relatively bad, and a good defensive team with Janai Broom in there blocking shots. So I think Kentucky's the better team. I like their upside, so that would be the side I'd look toward.
Yeah, I lean Kentucky at least. I put this as a potential bet. I want to study it a little bit more. I know that Kentucky's been weird since Severe Wheeler's they've been better since Wheeler's been out. Jacob Toppin, the younger brother, has been playing really a lot better as of late. And I kind of been waiting for him like for years now. I remember he's playing for Rhode Island. It's just finally kind of decided to show up. Chris Livingston is doing pretty well too as a freshman coming in. He's playing 50% of the minutes, so he's kind of really stepped it up a little bit. Auburn is a fade team for me, especially when they're on the road. I think that Auburn used to have a faster pace. They've slowed it down a little bit. As you see, it's 123rd in an average possession length. They used to be at 76 here, 71, 67 going in the past. So they've slowed it down a little bit, but their effective field goal percentage is really terrible. They can't shoot a three. If Kentucky can just kind of get the threes rolling like they have been the last few games against like Tennessee, against like Mississippi State and Florida, they're going to score a lot of points. Auburn's a pesky team. They go in hot streaks and cold streaks. They sometimes seem really hot for a minute, and then they can get really cold. I've noticed here. Kentucky, they really rebound the ball with Oscar down there on offense. So they're getting a lot of second chance points. And they're decent at rebounding on 50th. If you look at Auburn, if they can't get defensive rebounds, there's going to be a ton of second chance points here. And that's where I kind of like Kentucky. So don't get me wrong, Kentucky can crap the bed at any point,
Sure.
and that's what they have been. But I'm seeing a play on Kentucky here for the most part, OG. So I really like that one. And we have USC versus Utah. Why don't we cover that for OG as well, Kyle?
Sure, let's do it. Pac-12 matchup. This is the back-to-back that we talk about pretty often, Kiev, where it's play 2 games in a row at elevation. I can't bet USC in a game like this. The question is, do I bet Utah? I'm looking to see what the projections are for price. Ken Palm is -2 on Utah, -3.2 on Bart Torvik. What'd you say? Haslametrics? Pick 'em. Interesting. So we have a wide spread here of pick 'em up to 3.2. Pick 'em. I'm taking Utah. 3.2. I'm definitely not taking Utah. So it's going to be interesting to see where this one is. Maybe an under between these two teams. 140 is Ken Palm. 141 is Bart Torvik. So I would say if it's 140 or above, I would lean toward an under. Utah is certainly a better defensive team with Craig Smith as their head coach than they are offense. They're coming off a game that was higher scoring than expected against UCLA. Maybe that gives you some line value in a game like this. USC's one big problem that bothers me is they really can't get defensive rebounds. I don't like that in a team that they give so many second chance points up. But the Colorado-Utah back-to-back, this is a really, really tough spot for USC.
This is a great spot to bet Utah. If you're looking to back Utah, it's an amazing spot to bet them. I mean, USC, they did get that big win against Colorado in elevation. They beat Stanford by 10. First of all, Andy Enfield is just a great coach, and I kind of expect to see USC in the NCAA tournament. I know that there's always hate for the Pac-12, but their Auburn win, their BYU win, and their UCLA win should go pretty far here. Arizona didn't really work out too well for them, but Utah is just kind of coming off that ugly loss to UCLA, but it wasn't that ugly. They lost by 7. They were in this game for a while, and I didn't exactly watch it. I was following it on my phone, watching other games. But I did notice that they put up a good argument here. This is probably senior night for them, I would expect, being that it's their last home game in Utah. So, Utah can get those offensive boards. There's Brandon Carlson's been fantastic. He's a 7-foot guy. Really, it's kind of stepped in for the Gabe Madsen injury. Gabe's been out, and he's just kind of played some extra minutes since that's been happening. There is some injury concerns, though. You should check this out just to make sure some certain people are playing, and I'll just kind of pull up some of that right now. Worcester, questionable. Madsen, it says early March. So there's definitely some issues with them. There's a couple other smaller guys that rarely play are also questionable. But, it'd be nice to have one of those guys back. I'm curious if Worcester is going to play. He does score, a decent amount of points per game. It looks like he averages about 10. So I definitely look to see the injury report for sure. But, it's definitely a lean to me for Utah. And there's no way I could bet USC. So that's a good one.
I agree. And Kiev, quickly, let's take a look at Colorado hosting UCLA, because that's the other game that's in that kind of back-to-back at elevation. Colorado probably getting about 7 points at home against UCLA. I like UCLA as a team quite a bit. I think this is a tough spot for them. I think UCLA could make a pretty deep run in the NCAA tournament. They're a tournament-tested team, a veteran team. What do you think about the spot here, UCLA at Colorado? Both Utah and Colorado have been tremendous home court advantages in the past. Colorado has been the single worst team ATS on the road over the last 6 or 8 years in the country, but one of the very best at home.
Yeah, they've been, I think I've had it like 5 points some years for Colorado for their home court advantage, just well above and beyond everybody else. But, they haven't really had a ton of challenge this year at home. I know they lost to Washington at home, which was ugly. Then they lost to USC at home. It's a great bounce back spot for Colorado. My issues with them, this is such a terrible shooting team. I mean, Look at this red right here, 265th in effective field goal percentage. It's not like their defense is that great. It's pretty good. They play fast. So if they're playing fast and missing, even if your defense shows good, you're giving extra possessions away, So I'm a little bit concerned about them. God, that's a smelly dog, and it's probably the right side just based upon the situation with the elevation, and UCLA is probably looking forward to coming home and finishing up their streak against the Arizonas. But I can't bet Colorado, man.
I don't think I can do it either. I still think it's definitely the right situational spot. It's just a harder one to bet. It's kind of a bummer that both of those are kind of difficult because Utah is so shorthanded. And then now you've got Colorado, just a tough team to bet against a much more talented UCLA team.
Yeah, no disagreement, my man. Anything else you want to cover, or should we just get into our most likely dogs to win outright?
Let's go to our dogs here for this week. Do you want me to go first? Or
yeah, you go first on this, because I've got one more thing to check.
All right, I'm going to sound a little bit crazy because I'm going to go against a team that's been winning every single game here lately. I'm going to go to the Summit League, and I'm going to take Oral Roberts to lose against South Dakota State. South Dakota State Jackrabbits. Oral Roberts and South Dakota State both have to win the Summit League to get in the NCAA tournament. I know Oral Roberts had a good season, 26-4. It would really surprise me if a team that doesn't have a win other than Liberty in the top 100 is able to get in as an at-large team. I think these teams know this. Oral Roberts won 13 games in a row. South Dakota State was playing bad basketball. They were beaten horribly at Oral Roberts, 79-40. So it sounds crazy to be taking them in the next game. I just think that this game, it doesn't really matter to either team in the standings. Oral Roberts is 17-0. They're locked in the first place spot for the conference tournament. South Dakota State is locked in the second place spot. Still, this is South Dakota State's last home game. You know they'd love to go into there with some momentum. They do have a decent amount of veterans. I like South Dakota State to pull an upset here against Oral Roberts.
Oh, wow. Against Oral Roberts, everyone's future darling in the NCAA tournament, if they can win their tournament. I mean, I agree. I mean, it is the last game. There's no reason for them to win. Do they want to go undefeated? How bad is that a question for them? I don't know. I'm sure they do, but man, this is do or die for South Dakota State. What's this line going to be?
5, maybe somewhere in that range.
5 or 6.
I mean, yeah, at least 5, I would think. Maybe 5.5 or 6.
The problem with Oral Roberts lately, and I did lose one of my plays on them, is that they get ahead of teams, and then once they slow it down to run the clock, they really, really falter. They have to be going at full speed, or they ended up losing. So a good question is, can South Dakota State kind of D it up a little bit and try to slow them down a little bit? That would be really interesting for me to see. They can shoot some threes over there in South Dakota State, can't they? They can hit some threes. They can get hot. That's an advantage on Haslametrics that you can kind of see. They rank 98th in 3-point percentage adjusted, and Oral Roberts doesn't defend it well at 242nd. It just takes them. It's a bad shooting night, and South Dakota State could be live here. So motivation wise, yeah, South Dakota State. It's funny. I always think that I hate going undefeated into a conference tournament if you're relying it. It just throws it. It's almost like you think about the 73-9 Golden State Warriors that got the record and then they lose in the final. Right. It's just that extra thing. It's like you want to get the loss out of your way so it doesn't mess with your head in the most important thing. What's more important, having one loss or getting to the NCAA tournament by winning your side? So I'm absolutely liking that one. So I'm going to go with another very low-key type game. I'm going to go with Southern Utah against Sam Houston State, Kyle. Now, this is an interesting cap because this is in the WAC here, and these are some pretty good teams. I'll share my screen here. Southern Utah ranks 103rd on KenPom, and Sam Houston State is the one that ranks 71st. Well, Sam Houston, when they played Southern Utah, they lost by double digits. They lost 86-74. Sam Houston State is a very good defensive team, and they try to slow it down a little bit, but they're sloppy with the ball. They turn over the ball 20.4% of possessions. That's pretty high. Now, they do get some steals there, but Southern Utah, they're actually a pretty good shooting team. They rank 89th in effective field goal percentage. They play very fast, and they kind of do it all good from everywhere. From 3-point percentage, they're 98th. 2-point, they're 108th. And this is compared to obviously all the teams. So it's not like, you're comparing it anywhere else. Southern Utah has some pretty big road wins. I think there's a chance that you can get this. And you're getting them at a 6-point dog. You're probably going to get plus 200, plus 220 on this one. I just like the fact that they beat them before. Like a lot of people say, oh, revenge. Well, this team might match up well against them, and they might know how to beat them. So I want to go a little off the radar here. I'm not going to probably bet the spread. I'm probably going to bet them on the money line, Kyle.
Yeah, I like that. Good example too by OG. The Patriots going undefeated and then losing the Super Bowl. That's probably about the best example you could get is Patriots definitely would have liked to lose a game in the regular season and win that Super Bowl. Obviously, we can't feel too bad.
Well, Kyle, does that mean if Oral Roberts wins this game, are we fading them and picking somebody else at some serious plus money to win this tournament?
Ooh, I gotta think about that one, Kiev. I don't know. They're definitely the best team in the conference, no doubt about that. So I'd have to see the price. But as far as the Southern Utah game, Southern Utah, the other thing is they get to the line a bunch. They spend a lot of time at the free throw line. And Sam Houston State is a very heavy fouling team. They press. They're very aggressive on defense, get a lot of steals, but that gets the other team to the line a lot. So Southern Utah could stay in this game because they're living at the line too. So I do think this is one of those games that a money line at probably plus 210 or something like that is going to be worth it. So yeah, let's see if we can get a couple underdogs in and maybe hit some money line underdog parlay here.
That would be sweet, man, because we picked some decent ones. I think that Oral Roberts is going to take the steam. I think that you're going to get a better number if you wait it out. You're looking at probably 2 plus 250 plus 275 on each side, possibly in this situation. So so I really like it. Anything else we're missing, Kyle?
Man, I don't think so. Next week when we talk, we're going to be able to talk about some of the conference tournaments that are going on. We're going to be able to cover the end of the regular season for the big schools, and then it's not too far away from March Madness. So no, I think we covered quite a bit here in the last 45 minutes, but let's talk about where the people can find our information. You can go to huntersportspicks.com and find all my work, free picks newsletter over there. I honestly haven't been doing very well of late. We're always honest and transparent about how things are. The last couple of days I've done better, so hopefully it's a sign of things to come. My long-term track record's very good. There's plenty of season left in college basketball. There'll be plenty of plays here going the rest of the way, so you can get a discounted price over there at huntersportspicks.com. Also follow me at Kyle Hunter Picks on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm actually having kind of a poor week, but I'm coming off a great weekend of college basketball betting. We have a promotion. I'm giving away one of these babies, a nice polo. If you sign up for any one of our packages, March Madness has been my favorite time of year. I actually personally up my unit size a little bit for it. I have a great time betting it, and I study it really hard. The good thing about March Madness is there's some good secrets that Kyle and I both know on how to bet the first round and certain totals in certain situations and things like that. That's the stuff that we like to study. It's also definitely more metric based and more matchup based than just spot based, so coaching based as well. So we know a lot of those ins and outs. But this weekend I'm going to have some very big plays. The Iowa-Michigan State game, there's going to be a large play on. We gave you one with Gonzaga already, but there's a couple other ones and some good nuggets that I already have targeted for this weekend. So check us out at theoddsbreakers.com. Everyone, thank you so much for listening to this show and watching this feed. If you have any questions, you got Kyle Hunter's Twitter right there at Kyle Hunter Picks. I am at OB Kiev or at the Odds Breakers. Enjoy the rest of the weekend and go get some winners.
Thank you for watching Better Odds Sports Betting.